The air was thick with the kind of tension that makes your skin prickle like static before a storm. Why would a woman I barely knew stand on my porch, clutching a key that didn't fit my lock, her face twisted with righteous fury as she dialed 911? I stood there, frozen in my own doorway, watching Karen. Yes, that Karen, the HOA president with a clipboard permanently glued to her hand, jabbing at her phone like it was a personal affront. Her voice, sharp and accusatory, cut through the quiet evening. "There's an intruder in my neighborhood," she barked, her eyes locked on me like I was some criminal mastermind. Me, a single mom who'd just moved into this cookie-cutter suburban hell, trying to unpack boxes and keep my 7-year-old from melting down over a lost stuffed bunny. The sun dipped low, painting the cul-de-sac in shades of orange and gold, but there was no warmth here. Karen's key, clutched like a talisman, glinted as she waved it in my face. "This is my house," she insisted, her voice climbing an octave. I almost laughed, almost because the absurdity of it all was suffocating. My name was on the deed, the mortgage payments draining my bank account. Yet here she was claiming my home with a key that didn't work. I wanted to scream, to tell her to get off my property, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I watched her pace, her sensible loafers clicking against the concrete, her blonde bob swaying like a metronome. I'd moved to Willow Creek for a fresh start after the divorce, chasing the promise of quiet streets and good schools. The realtor had warned me about the HOA, but I brushed it off. How bad could it be? Famous last words. Karen had introduced herself the day I arrived, all smiles and casseroles, but her eyes had lingered too long on my unmanicured lawn, my beat-up Honda, my daughter Lily's mismatched socks. I should have known then she was trouble. Now, here we were, her standing on my porch like a general claiming territory, and me, clutching the doorframe, wondering how my life had spiraled into this nightmare. "Ma'am, you need to calm down," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Lily was inside, probably peeking through the curtains, and I didn't want her to see me unravel. Karen's eyes narrowed, her lips pursing like she'd tasted something sour. "Calm down? You're squatting in my house, and you want me to calm down?" She thrust the key toward me again, as if it proved her point. I glanced at it, brassy, generic, the kind you'd find in a hardware store. It wasn't even close to the sleek, double-sided key that came with my house. I took a deep breath, my hands shaking as I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling the dispatcher," I said, loud enough for her to hear. Her head snapped up, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. Good. Let her sweat. I dialed the non-emergency line, my fingers fumbling but precise. Yes, this is Emily Harper at 142 Willow Lane. There's a woman on my porch claiming my house is hers. She's called 911, but I'm the homeowner. I have the deed, the paperwork, everything." The dispatcher's voice was calm, professional, a lifeline in the chaos. Karen's face reddened, her mouth opening to protest, but I kept talking, my words a shield. "She's holding a key that doesn't fit my lock. Can you send someone to verify?" Karen's pacing stopped. She stared at me, her phone still pressed to her ear, but her confidence seemed to waver. The dispatcher promised an officer would be there soon, and I hung up, my heart pounding. Karen lowered her phone, her eyes darting to the key in her hand, then back to me. "You're making a mistake," she said, but her voice was quieter now, less certain. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The truth was on my side, and I'd make sure everyone knew it. The cul-de-sac was silent, save for the distant hum of a lawnmower and the faint chirping of crickets. Neighbors were starting to peek out from behind their blinds, drawn by the spectacle. I could feel their eyes on us, judging, whispering. Karen noticed too, her posture stiffening as she tried to reclaim her authority. "This isn't over," she said, her voice regaining its edge. She turned on her heel and marched to her pristine SUV, parked at an angle that screamed entitlement. I watched her go, my stomach churning. This was just the beginning, wasn't it? Inside, Lily ran to me, her small arms wrapping around my waist. "Mommy, why was that lady yelling?" she asked, her voice muffled against my shirt. I knelt down, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "She's just confused, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile. But as I glanced out the window, watching Karen's taillights disappear, I knew this wasn't just confusion. This was war. The next morning, the air felt heavier, as if the neighborhood itself was holding its breath. I sipped my coffee, staring at the stack of moving boxes still cluttering my living room. Lily was at school, thank God, because I needed space to think. Karen's outburst had left me rattled, but I wasn't about to let her bully me out of my own home. I pulled out the deed, the mortgage papers, every document I'd signed in a haze of exhaustion and hope. They were all there, notarized and indisputable. Emily Harper, owner of 142 Willow Lane. So why was Karen so convinced this house was hers? I decided to dig deeper. The HOA website was a labyrinth of rules and bylaws, but I found the board member's contact info. Karen's name was at the top, of course, listed as president. Her bio was a masterpiece of self-aggrandizement. Community leader, champion of property values, guardian of Willow Creek's aesthetic integrity. I rolled my eyes. There was an email address, but I wasn't about to tip her off. Instead, I called the realtor, Susan, who'd sold me the house. "Emily, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice laced with panic when I recounted the porch showdown. "Karen's been a thorn in everyone's side, but this is next level. Let me check the records." While Susan dug into the paperwork, I couldn't shake the image of Karen's key. It was wrong, obviously, but her certainty gnawed at me. Was there a mix-up at the title company? A clerical error? I paced the kitchen, my coffee growing cold when my phone buzzed. It was Susan. "Emily, the house is yours," clear as day. But I found something odd. Karen's husband, Richard, owned 142 Willow Lane years ago, before it went into foreclosure. The bank sold it to you after the previous owners defaulted. Karen might think it's still hers because of some old claim. My stomach twisted. So that was it. Karen wasn't just a nosy neighbor. She had a personal stake in this. I thanked Susan and hung up, my mind racing. Richard. I vaguely remembered Karen mentioning him during her welcome casserole drop-off, something about him being away on business. I hadn't thought much of it then, but now it felt like a missing piece. I grabbed my laptop and started searching public records. It didn't take long to find it. Richard and Karen Thompson, former owners of 142 Willow Lane, foreclosed on 5 years ago. The house had sat empty until I bought it. Karen must have kept a key, clinging to a past she couldn't let go. I was about to close my laptop when a notification popped up, a new email from the HOA. "Notice of violation. Unauthorized occupancy," it read. My blood ran cold. Karen had filed an official complaint, claiming I was squatting in her house. The email demanded I vacate within 48 hours or face legal consequences. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. She was doubling down, weaponizing the HOA to intimidate me. But I wasn't the pushover she thought I was. I called the dispatcher again, this time requesting a copy of the police report from last night. The officer had arrived after Karen left, taken my statement, and confirmed my ownership with a quick check of the records. "You're good, Ms. Harper," he'd said, but his tone suggested he'd dealt with Karen before. The dispatcher promised to email the report, and I spent the rest of the morning gathering evidence. Every document, every email, every scrap of proof that this house was mine. I wasn't just fighting for my home. I was fighting for Lily, for our future, for the right to exist without someone like Karen trying to erase us. By afternoon, the neighborhood was buzzing. A few neighbors stopped by, offering awkward smiles and vague apologies. "Karen's intense, but she means well," one said, as if that excused her behavior. I nodded politely, but inside I was seething. Means well? She called the cops on me in front of my daughter. This wasn't about meaning well, it was about power, and I was done playing nice. The HOA meeting was scheduled for that evening, and I knew I had to show up. Karen wanted a fight, and I was ready to give her one. I spent the afternoon preparing, printing out copies of my deed, the police report, and the foreclosure records. I even found an old listing for 142 Willow Lane, complete with photos that matched my house exactly. No question it was the same property. Armed with my evidence, I dropped Lily off at a neighbor's house and headed to the community center, my heart pounding like a war drum. The room was packed, the air thick with the scent of cheap coffee and judgment. Karen stood at the front, her clipboard a scepter, her smile as fake as the pearls around her neck. She launched into the meeting with her usual spiel about lawn maintenance and mailbox uniformity, but I could feel her eyes on me, waiting for a moment. When the floor opened for new business, she pounced. "We have a serious issue at 142 Willow Lane," she said, her voice dripping with concern. "An individual is occupying a property that belongs to me, and I've filed a formal complaint." The room erupted in murmurs. I stood, my legs trembling, but my voice steady. "My name is Emily Harper, and I'm the legal owner of 142 Willow Lane. I have the deed, the mortgage, and a police report confirming my ownership. Karen, your key doesn't work because this house hasn't been yours in 5 years." I held up my stack of papers, letting the weight of the truth sink in. The crowd shifted, whispers growing louder. Karen's face flushed, but she didn't back down. "Those documents are fabricated," she snapped. "My husband and I built that house. It's ours." That's when the twist hit me like a punch to the gut. A man in the back stood up, his face pale, his voice shaking. "Karen, stop this." It was Richard, her husband, who I'd assumed was away on business. He looked exhausted, his suit rumpled, his eyes avoiding hers. "The house isn't ours. We lost it. You know that." The room went silent, every eye on him. Karen's mouth opened, then closed, her clipboard trembling in her hands. Richard turned to me, his voice low but clear. "I'm sorry, Ms. Harper. Karen's been struggling since the foreclosure. She can't let it go." The air shifted, the crowd's judgment turning toward Karen. I should have felt triumphant, but all I felt was pity. Karen wasn't just a bully. She was broken, clinging to a past that didn't exist anymore. But pity didn't erase the damage she'd done. I stepped forward, addressing the room. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to live in my home with my daughter. If Karen has a claim, she can take it to court. But the records don't lie." I handed my documents to the HOA secretary, who nodded, her face grim. Karen's eyes burned with defiance, but she said nothing. Richard took her arm, guiding her out of the room as the meeting dissolved into chaos. I stayed, answering questions, shaking hands, feeling the tide turn in my favor. But as I drove home, Richard's words echoed in my mind. Karen's pain was real, but so was mine, and I wasn't about to let her take my home to soothe her wounds. The next few days were a blur of tension and paperwork. Karen didn't show up at my house again, but her presence lingered like a storm cloud. The HOA retracted the violation notice after reviewing my documents, but I knew this wasn't over. Karen wasn't the type to back down, not when her pride was on the line. I kept Lily close, avoiding the cul-de-sac's prying eyes, but the whispers followed us everywhere. "Poor Karen," some said. "She's lost so much." Others took my side, offering casseroles and cautious support. I didn't want their pity or their potlucks. I wanted peace. I hired a lawyer just in case. She was a no-nonsense woman named Carla, who took one look at my paperwork and laughed. "This is airtight, Emily. Karen's got nothing but a grudge and a useless key." Still, Carla advised me to install security cameras and change the locks, just to be safe. I did both, the locksmith's visit a stark reminder of how quickly my fresh start had turned sour. Lily noticed the cameras, her small face creasing with worry. "Are we in trouble, Mommy?" she asked. I hugged her tight, promising we were fine, but the lie tasted bitter. We weren't fine, not yet. Then came the letter. It arrived in a crisp, white envelope, no return address, just my name scrawled in neat, angry handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed and unsigned, but I knew it was from Karen. "You may have the house, but you'll never belong here," it read. "Willow Creek is my community, and I'll make sure everyone knows who you really are." My hands shook as I read it, rage and fear battling in my chest. This wasn't just about the house anymore. It was personal. Karen was trying to run me out, to make me feel like an outsider in my own home. I showed the letter to Carla, who frowned. "This is harassment," she said. "We can file a restraining order." I hesitated. A restraining order felt like escalation, like pouring gasoline on a fire. But then I thought of Lily, of the fear in her eyes, and I nodded. "Do it." Carla filed the paperwork that afternoon, and I felt a flicker of control return. I wasn't just defending my house now. I was defending my daughter's right to feel safe. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the couch, the letter in my hands, reading it over and over. Karen's words were venomous, but they betrayed her desperation. She wasn't just fighting me. She was fighting her own past, her own failures. I almost felt sorry for her, but then I remembered her standing on my porch, calling me a squatter in front of my daughter. Sympathy had its limits. The next morning, I woke to a commotion outside. A police car was parked in Karen's driveway, and she was on her lawn, arguing with an officer. My heart raced as I stepped outside, keeping my distance. Richard was there too, his face drawn, his hands raised in surrender. She didn't mean it, he was saying, but the officer wasn't listening. Karen's eyes met mine across the street, and for a moment, I saw raw, unfiltered hatred. Then she looked away, her shoulders slumping as the officer handed her a document. I didn't need to ask what it was. My restraining order had been served. The restraining order didn't stop Karen completely, but it slowed her down. She stayed away from my house, her SUV no longer idling ominously at the end of the cul-de-sac. The neighborhood gossip mill churned, painting her as the villain now, though some still clung to her side, whispering about her tragic story. I didn't care about the rumors. I just wanted to move on. But moving on wasn't easy when every creak of the house made me jump, when every glance out the window felt like a potential threat. I started attending HOA meetings regularly, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to keep an eye on things. The board was apologetic, even embarrassed about Karen's actions, and they voted to remove her as president. She didn't show up to contest it, which surprised me. Richard did, though, his face etched with exhaustion. "She's not well," he said quietly, after the meeting. "She's been seeing a therapist, but it's hard for her to let go of the past." I nodded, unsure what to say. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to extend an olive branch, but the memory of her key, her accusations, her letter, kept me guarded. Then came the twist that nearly broke me. One afternoon, while cleaning out the garage, I found a small box tucked behind some old paint cans. It wasn't mine. I hadn't even unpacked half my stuff yet. Inside was a photo album, the pages yellowed and brittle. The picture showed a younger Karen and Richard smiling in front of 142 Willow Lane, their arms around a little boy who couldn't have been more than 5. My heart sank. Their son. There were birthday parties, Christmases, moments of joy captured in this very house. The last photo was different. A for sale sign in the yard, Karen's face tight with grief. A sticky note on the back read, "We'll get it back someday." I sat there, the album in my lap, tears stinging my eyes. Karen wasn't just fighting for a house. She was fighting for a life she'd lost, a family that had unraveled. The foreclosure, the move, the pain, it was all tied to this place. I understood her now, but understanding didn't erase the hurt she'd caused. I closed the album and set it aside, unsure what to do with it. Returning it felt like a trap, like giving her an excuse to come back. Keeping it felt wrong, like holding a piece of her soul hostage. I called Carla, who advised me to turn the album over to the police as evidence of Karen's fixation. I did, but not before making copies of the photos. I didn't know why. Maybe I wanted proof of her humanity, a reminder that she wasn't just the monster who'd terrorized me. The police took the album, and I didn't hear from Karen again. But the weight of her story lingered, heavy as the boxes still cluttering my living room. Lily started to notice the change in me, her small hand slipping into mine as we walked to the park. "You're sad, Mommy," she said one day, her eyes searching mine. I smiled, brushing her hair back. "I'm okay, sweetheart. Just figuring things out." But I wasn't okay. I was angry, tired, and haunted by a woman I barely knew. Weeks passed. and the neighborhood settled into an uneasy calm. Karen moved out, her house listed for sale almost overnight. Richard stopped by to apologize one last time, his eyes red-rimmed, his voice barely above a whisper. "She's staying with her sister in Ohio," he said. "I hope you can find some peace now." I nodded, but peace felt like a distant dream. The camera stayed up, the lock stayed changed, and I still checked the windows every night. I threw myself into making the house ours. Lily and I painted her room a bright, cheerful yellow, hung fairy lights, and planted flowers in the front yard. The neighbors started to warm up, inviting us to barbecues, offering playdates for Lily. Slowly, Willow Creek started to feel like home, but the shadow of Karen's key lingered. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd won the battle but lost something else. My sense of safety, my trust in people. One evening, as I tucked Lily into bed, she asked, "Will that lady come back?" I hesitated, then shook my head. "No, sweetheart. She's gone." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure. Karen's pain was a ghost, haunting the corners of my house, my mind. I kissed Lily's forehead and turned off the light, my heart heavy with the weight of it all. The next day, I decided to take control. I wrote a letter, not to Karen, but to myself. It was a promise, a vow to reclaim my home, my life, my joy. I wrote about the fear, the anger, the moments of doubt, but also about the strength I'd found, the love I had for Lily, the future we were building. I sealed it in an envelope and tucked it into a drawer, a reminder that I was more than this fight, more than Karen's accusations. The HOA elected a new president, a kind older man who prioritized community over control. The violation notices stopped, the whispers faded, and life moved forward. But I kept the copies of Karen's photos, not out of spite, but as a reminder of the cost of holding on to the past. I didn't hate her anymore. I pitied her, but I also respected her pain. It didn't excuse her actions, but it made her human. Lily and I started a tradition, Friday night movie marathons in the living room, curled up with popcorn and laughter. The house felt alive again, filled with our voices, our memories. We were healing, slowly but surely, building something new on the ashes of Karen's war. A year later, 142 Willow Lane was truly ours. The paint was fresh, the garden bloomed, and Lily's laughter echoed through the halls. The neighborhood had changed too. No more clipboard tyrants, no more violation notices for every blade of grass out of place. The new HOA president invited me to join the board, and to my surprise, I said yes. Not because I wanted power, but because I wanted to make sure no one else felt the way I had. Unwelcome, unsafe, unworthy. I never heard from Karen again, but I thought of her sometimes, especially when I passed her old house, now home to a young couple with a newborn. I wondered if she'd found peace, if she'd let go of the key that didn't fit. I hope so for her sake, but I didn't dwell on it. My life was here, with Lily, with the neighbors who'd become friends, with the home we'd fought for. One spring morning, as I planted tulips in the front yard, Lily ran out with a drawing, a bright, messy sketch of our house, complete with a smiling sun and a rainbow. "It's us," she said, beaming. I hugged her, tears prickling my eyes. This was what mattered. The love, the resilience, the small moments that made a house a home. Karen's key had opened a door to chaos, but it also showed me my own strength. I'd faced her, faced the HOA, faced my own fears, and come out stronger. As I stood there, the sun warm on my face, I realized something. Home wasn't just a place, it was a choice. A choice to fight, to stay, to build something beautiful despite the storms. And we'd done it, Lily and I. We turned 142 Willow Lane into a sanctuary, a place where we could grow, laugh, and dream. Karen's key didn't open my house, but it unlocked something else, a fire in me, a determination to never let anyone take what was ours. I tucked Lily's drawing into my pocket, a talisman of our victory. The cul-de-sac was quiet, the air filled with the scent of fresh earth and possibility. We were home, and no one, not Karen, Not the HOA, not the ghosts of the past, could take that away.